Hello, and welcome to another episode of Superpowers, the show where you get to experience the extraordinary. And today I have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited for you to meet her. Her name is Tricia Barker, and she's a medium, and she's an author, and she's an NDE experiencer. And we're going to get to all that in just a second. Real quick, I need to talk for a second about an event that I did back 2 weeks ago. It was the Helping Parents Heal event. And it was an amazing event. Helping Parents Heal is an organization for parents who have lost a child. And they actually sort of stretch into the area of near-death experiences and also mediums to help parents who are grieving to reconnect with or feel a connection to the child that they've lost. And it's beautiful. And it was just an amazing experience for me and for us, my whole crew, the entire weekend. So I wanted to let you know that while we were there, we live streamed 4 of the keynote speakers, and we also made VODs of that. And so we've got the VODs available, and you can go to streamingforthesoul.com and you can find those. And I promise you, it is well worth your time. They are beautiful. They are heartfelt. Suzanne Giesman is just extraordinary, as is Gary Schwartz. Gary Schwartz will probably expand your mind out beyond the limits of the universe. So really worth it to take a look at those. And again, you could find those on streamingforthesoul.com. And then we've got another event coming up June 6th. And that's a Q&A with Lee Carroll and Cryon. And we did one of these back on January 22nd of 2017, and it was great. We got great questions. We had a lot of fun. And so look for that. The live streaming tickets are available, or you can also just go straight to getting the VOD. But those are also available on streamingforthesoul.com. So look for that. All right. And there's housekeeping for us. And now I want to jump right into Tricia Barker, and I'm pretty stoked about this. So Tricia, just in case you don't know, she's an award-winning teacher. She's an inspirational speaker and a healing facilitator, and she is also the author of a new book, which is not out yet, but it's coming. And it's about her near-death experience and the transformations that have occurred as a result of that. She had a near-death experience her senior year in college as a result of a horrible car accident. And so we'll just let her tell us more about that in a second. So anyway, in addition to being teacher and author, Tricia speaks at conferences around the country about her near-death experience, about healing from trauma, and connecting with divine love. And so really, without further ado, I just want to jump straight to Tricia Barker and say hello. So hello, Tricia Barker. How are you?
Oh, hello. Great. I'm so happy to be here with you. And I wish I could be at some of these events that you live stream. They sound amazing.
Oh, well, we wish you could be there too, because it's always great when you have, people that in the room with, they're either mediums or they've got near-death experiences. I don't know what it is about the vibe in the room, but it just gets really, really comfy and really homey.
Amen to that. Oh, yeah. To be in those crowds. Like, I wish I had done more of that when I was younger. I did some, but,
Yeah.
like I was in college when I had the near-death experience. So suddenly I was hanging out and in spiritual crowds, and it was interesting. It was cool. But yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I was moved by, again, just by the power of the healing that comes from near-death experience stories, and also from the mediumship when I was at Helping Parents Heal. And so when I saw you were speaking coming up actually next week now at an IONS conference, I really wanted to hear your story and share it with our audience. So if we could, let's hear a little about you and what led up to your near-death experience.
Yeah, well, I'll start where I was, at the time of my near-death experience, where I grew up in a religious home, but I wasn't very impressed with my family, and I saw a lot of judgment and anger in that home situation and abuse, and really I went to college and I just loved learning and loved philosophy and loved the party scene and loved everything about college, and I really did not care much about religion anymore or spirituality. And after a while, I kind of felt lost. There was just this discontent and this sadness. Like at first everything was exciting, and then suddenly I was just longing for something more. And the Austin 10K is a race that happens in Austin. I was at UT, and I decided that I would run this race right before graduation. And this was my symbol of like getting my life back together and
Right.
and really just staying on track with what I needed to do. And on the way to that race is when I had this massive car accident, and I didn't have health insurance. And so that really is the human aspect of my story is part of this as well. So
Right.
people who
Yeah.
who don't have health insurance, people who are lost, people who are incredibly hurt by their upbringing, like that's who I was, and that's a part of my story. And
Hmm.
what is amazing is to meet that love of God, after a life like that. So yeah, the painful part is I waited 17 hours in that
Oh.
ER waiting for a doctor to
Right.
work on me, and one was out and was not going to operate on me. And then I was taken into surgery, and very quickly I had the beginning of a near-death experience. So I remember signing that form and thinking, all right, there's a 17% chance of death. I got to do this. There's no other choice. And I left my body, and I saw immediately just that we go on. And being agnostic at that time, I was so shocked. I mean, you can't imagine how shocked I was. I literally just wanted to return to my body immediately just so I could tell all my agnostic friends that we go on. Like I was that certain in those first moments. And I don't understand how anyone can't be certain about the afterlife. Like I never saw this as a dream. I just saw this as an added reality immediately, in the first moments outside of my body. That's all I really needed. But it was really an extensive, incredible near-death experience. Do you want me to just tell it?
I would actually love to hear the details of it. Yeah, and I'm sure that our audience would love to hear that too. So, yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, so there I am outside of form, and my body is just incredibly bloody, and it was opened up. I had crushed vertebrae, so they opened me up from mid back all the way down the hip, and then they were taking bone out of the hip, so there was just blood spilling all around. And I remember looking and going, "Wow, that's intense! I didn't realize surgery was so brutal." And then I looked up and I saw these amazing angels, and it's taken me 20 years to write about this, and I'm a writer. So I went to graduate school for creative writing, and I
Right.
went and I workshop, these initial like moments with the angels many times with agnostics and atheists, and they're like, "What do you mean that light came out of their eyes and they communicated telepathically?" And I'm like, "That's just what they did, okay?" Like they didn't have words; they just sent this light into my spirit form, and they were like, "What, like lasers?" And I'm like, "Not like lasers, but they just sent these waves of light into me, and they were so intelligent. So I knew these angels were somehow connected to me, somehow connected to God, and that everything was okay, that they had it, that
Right.
that they were there for my benefit, and they calmed me down. And the most amazing thing that I saw is they sent healing light through the doctors and into my body, and they slowed down with communication, like, and in that moment they were very clearly saying, watch this. They wanted me to see that they could work through people and that they could alter things. And so I saw that my body would heal. I saw that everything would be fine, that I would walk. And I also knew I was meant to remember that, because I do believe that angels have worked through me later in the classroom and with people, and they work through us all the time. And they were
Right.
showing me just how powerful they were in that moment.
Right.
Well, then the monitor flatlined, And I'd seen it, in television shows many times. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm technically dead. That it's over.
Uh-huh.
I was
Yeah,
like,
at the end.
yeah. I was like, I don't want to watch this. Like I don't want to see how they're going to revive me. That isn't fun. Let's go
Yeah.
see something else. And so I left the hospital, and in the corridor, I caught I'm not my grandfather, my stepfather getting a candy bar, and looked at him for a moment, and that became my verifiable event, because later I verified that he got that exact candy bar. But I didn't know why I was looking at him. I just thought, maybe the angels are wrong. Maybe I'm not going to walk. Maybe I'm just dead at this point, and I'm done. So it's
Uh-huh.
just me saying goodbye. And
Right.
then as I was leaving the hospital area, there was this beautiful sky, kind of a night sky over Austin, and I got this feeling of great peace and oneness with
Mm.
all the people I'd ever known. It was almost as if I was saying goodbye to everyone I'd known, and then it extended out into the town, and I just felt kind of one with everyone in
Right.
Austin. And I saw how beautiful some people's souls were. And in that moment, I transitioned a bit into a life review. And in my life review, the parts of my life where I had been harmful to myself with my thoughts or my actions, God kind of helped me flip through that. Like, that's a darkness I didn't need to worry with. Like, it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't important. All the insecurity, all the pain, all the wanting
Right.
to be dead, all the, just the carrying that abuse from childhood into young adulthood. I just saw that I didn't have to harm myself anymore with any of those thoughts, that
Right.
wasn't of God.
Right.
And it was just not important.
Mm-hmm.
And then I flipped to other people and other circumstances, and I saw that I needed to be less judgmental. That was my main lesson when I did my life review, is that I prevented myself from getting close to other people because of judgments. Well, later that flipped, and I had no judgments, and
Right.
like, so that was another story.
So
Which has its good and bad, good
so
and
now
bad elements.
everybody's in the tent.
Yeah, everybody's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so I saw not to have these certain barriers, that were really just arbitrary and silly and based on culture. And so I was missing out on the lovely hearts of people. And then after that life review, I ended up somewhere around childhood. And then when I was at this place, I started hearing messages from God. And they, like the angels, these messages were communicated kind of telepathically in this wave of light. And one message that was really clear is love is all that matters. It's all that we take with us.
Right.
And so I held on to that. And then another message was one about just remind others to go to nature, which I thought was simple, but then I
Mm.
opened up into this beautiful heavenly landscape, and I remembered how happy I was in childhood in nature and how beautiful those moments were. And I was reminded to be like a little child. And so I literally became like a little child. And so I was in the grass just playing and happy in this heavenly landscape. And I saw my grandfather there, and he was the only person who I knew who was dead. And he was younger, and I didn't recognize him at first.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw the truck that he had left us. And so
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's him. And
Yeah.
and I was fine. Like, I was happy in death. Like, some people have this longing or this wish to go back to someone, and there was no
Mm-hmm.
one that I really longed to go back for. Like, in
Right.
some ways, life was kind of painful, and I was like, this is such a nice release. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm there with my grandfather, and we're in this beautiful grass. And then he looks up, and I see this beautiful light, and I knew that this light was God. And he kind of sweetly turns around and says, do you want to continue on? And I said, yes, I want to continue. I want to keep going. Of course I
Right.
do.
Yeah.
And then my spirit form kind of went toward the light. And as I got closer and closer to this light, I felt people's prayers, and I felt
Mm.
one aunt kind of pulling me back. And she
Right.
lost a daughter in a car wreck who died. And I heard her exact words pleading, God, please don't don't take Tricia. I don't. And she didn't want my mom to go through what she had went through when she lost her daughter. And then I
Right.
heard other people's prayers in my family, my mom and my dad and my grandmother and various people. And I thought, that's sweet. I'm glad that they're praying, but it didn't interest me because this light over here was so
Yeah, it
amazing.
was.
Yeah.
That's got
I was
my
like,
interest right now.
that's sweet. All right, bye bye. And I'm going toward this light, and then suddenly I just felt the love that I'd been searching for my whole life. Like I just felt a combination of everything that I'd ever wanted, security,
Hmm.
love, peace, happiness, joy, just every great emotion that you could possibly think. But also a release of all the things that we don't want here, the worry and the stress and the pain and, everything that is the opposite of every good feeling just like float away. And then every amazing feeling that you can possibly come up with is what I felt. So it was like, how can you describe freedom and support at the same time? So I felt loved and cradled, but also free as a bird,
Right.
so it was just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
this amazing moment and then deeply loved and so drawn to this love. And so I
Hmm.
felt like who knows how long the time was, but I felt like it was a long time that I journeyed toward the light. And then there was some force that was like, stop, this is as far as you get to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, no,
Wait a second. I am
no,
pretty
there's
sure I bought the e-ticket. I think I get to go all the way.
yeah, I was like, no, 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 I really like this. And
Oh,
then God's voice kind of, and people, ask, is it a male voice, female voice? I don't really know. The angels or God. It was just
right.
powerful. Both voices echoed deep within in me, and I could just hear the reverberation. And God was like, look down. And
Yeah.
I saw a river. And I was like, okay. And I knew this river to be life and the long journey of life. And then I saw these lights beside the river, and some were full of light, and some were kind of dim, and some were darkened. And God was
Yeah.
like, These are going to be your students, and you have to go back and you have
Uh,
to interact with them." And I was like, "Oh, no, no, no,
oh
no.
no.
God, if you know me, I'm one, a feminist, two, I don't want a traditional career for women, and three, I grew up poor, so I'm really going to need to make some money if I'm going
Yeah.
back back
This
down
does
there."
not sound like that.
And God was like, no, 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 you're going to go teach. And that was the last bit that I got from God. And I was just like so saddened that that light was being taken
Mm,
away from me. So I was like swallowed up by this dark wind as if it was being forced back into my body.
right.
And it was a painful, it was more emotionally painful than physically painful at that
Hmm.
point because I just longed to be near
Right.
God.
Yeah.
And a lot of near-death experiencers, I've interviewed a few now, come back and they say that they're embarrassed to talk about it. But I guess being an extrovert that I am, like the minute that core,
Yeah.
the minute the
Hey, guess what?
tracheotomy yeah, was taken out of me, I was like, "Hey, I died. Hey, people, I died. Let's get this out there." and,
uh,
and so the surgeon, she went ahead and verified that I'd been dead. And I tried to ask her more details. And even in the midst of morphine and everything that, I had 9 days in the hospital, had to be put in a body cast and all
right.
kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff. I knew that something spiritually profound had changed. And I knew that I was different. Like the
Right.
body just didn't matter as much. I was so happy when I could close
Hmm.
my eyes and connect with the angels again or connect with that light. And that was a connection I never really had. Maybe in childhood I had a deep faith and a deep connection to God, but this
Right.
was so immediate and so real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I never questioned it, never felt embarrassed about it. I felt disappointed that people were not as excited as me.
Well, yeah, especially, the surgeon's not going to really jump in there and be really excited about it. They don't, I know they hear about it, but they really don't sort of take it on with like it has any kind of real credibility. They start thinking that maybe it's chemicals in the brain or something like that. And there's a lot of, they look at it from a physical experience as opposed to a spiritual experience.
Right. And I couldn't understand that because I was like, hey, like if you just verified that I literally died and I told you first that I died, then there's something going on
you,
here.
you would think,
like,
yeah.
like I know what happened. yeah, she kept reinforcing, well, after your next blood transfusion, you'll feel better. And
You'll
oh,
feel
your
better.
recovery, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
your recovery is going so well. And oh, we're so pleased,
yeah.
with your body. And I was
It
like,
was going kind of badly there for a while, so we're glad to at least have you talking, even if it is nonsense.
yeah, I know. And I quickly understood that God was a concept to other people and an
Right,
experience to me.
right.
And I was
Yeah,
like, oh, it's just like a philosophy to these people. They're
sure,
not, like
sure.
around me,
Yeah.
like even the nurses who are religious, they're like, yes, I believe in God. Isn't that sweet? You know?
I know.
And I'm like, but God is so loving and it feels so great.
Oh, hey, real quick before we push on a little bit, I just kind of want to go back into your experience of it for a second, and just I get asked every once in a while from people, and because they really want to know. There's a desire, there's sort of a longing for continuity of like personality, and so they go, well, did you feel like it was you when you were on the other side? Just talk a little bit about that just for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was recently asked that same question, so I know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so the individuality of me largely stayed. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I continued on and I had this essence, the spiritual form that I knew was like me, but I
Right.
knew that the physical form was gone. But I also knew the minute I started interacting with the angels, I was learning something on this energetic level that
Right.
was changing me.
Yeah.
And I was not going to be the same person, even from that first moment outside of my body. So I
Yeah.
knew that there was some kind of, people call it downgrades, upgrades, whatever, but I was,
Improvements.
yeah, downloads, upgrades,
Yeah.
but whatever it was, my whole being was changed in those moments with the angels. And I
Yeah.
knew that I was given more information and much more intelligence than I had before about the workings
Mm-hmm.
of life, really. Because,
Right.
I was kind of a dark, insecure, sad person before the near death experience. And,
Right.
that moment began to change and lighten me up. But maybe it was taking me also back to my essential nature. Maybe we all have that, that
Right.
loving, beautiful part of ourselves. And so, a lot of the pain was just being stripped away from me. And I was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
shown that in the life review. I was also shown how to be better, so I was
Mm-hmm.
shown that kindness and love for other people and service to
Mm-hmm.
others is the best thing that we can do. And I
Yeah.
wished that I had more moments where I was just really loving and kind to other
Right.
people. I saw
Yeah.
the moments where I was, in instances, and that gave me joy. And I was like, just listening even to a woman in a dentist's office who's older tell her life story. And, I saw myself do that. And I thought, well, that was sweet of me. Like, she had this connection for a moment. And so, yeah, I retained myself, but if there was ever a moment where I was starting to lose my essential self, I think it was right as I got stopped near God. So I think I was
Right.
so in
Yeah.
love with God, and God was so in love with me, and I was so in love with that experience that
Yeah.
I just wanted to lose some of that individuality and merge with God
Right.
and be in that space. And I also saw that that love and that light, it did change me just as the angels changed me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, I knew that I would be coming back, holding on to a piece of it, that there'd be some little core that I could never lose. And,
Right.
I lost it in life before that near death experience. I'm sure that I did. And I knew that the near death experience gave me this core of light that no matter what happened, I had that
Yeah.
connection to God, and it's
Right.
in my heart. And that, so yes, you have your individuality, but you change some, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as you
Right.
as you
Right.
learn more.
Yeah.
The kind of like life. I mean, it's a
Sure.
metaphor for our lives. We change throughout life. Why wouldn't our
Absolutely.
spirit form change
Absolutely.
some?
Yeah, gratefully, I'm actually nothing like I was when I was in my 20s. So, I'm
Is it?
sure a lot of people feel that way, and it can be a little bit like that. I don't really even know who that person was, other than I have this sense of connection to it, and I have the memories of it. But wow, I got an upgrade, so for sure, and. Anyway, so another question for you along those lines. So, what you were talking about is that what you felt judgment falling away, judgment for other people, which I think probably is one of the biggest things that we yoke ourselves to. I mean, more misery and
Yeah.
more unhappiness comes from that judgment of other people, and I think also ourselves too. I wonder if you
Yeah.
feel like that are you easier on yourself too?
Definitely. And I think that's been more my life lesson. It was pretty easy to give universal, unconditional love to students because, it's not
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm the authority, they're the students,
Right.
and they're coming there to learn. So I can just give love,
Yeah.
like that's just an easy thing to do. And self-love, I understood, very clearly, not
Mm-hmm.
that self-harm and darkness and pain is something not to waste my time on.
Right.
But yeah, there still was growth, and there still was a lot of learning that I had to
Yeah.
do. And I'm so grateful to all the spiritual teachers out there and all the great books out there, because I continued to learn and I continued to work
Right.
on that piece for a long time, because I think anyone coming from a dysfunctional home or from an abusive home has to learn how to love themselves. I knew, from the
Mm.
beginning in my physical recovery after my near-death experience, that my family wasn't going to understand me completely, and
Right.
I was in this alone, and I was going to have to love myself through it.
Yeah.
And so, to be this beacon of light, sometimes
Mm.
you're not finding support, like necessarily around you. You're giving a lot of support, and
Right.
so at
Yeah.
some point you do have to give some support to yourself too, or you'll burn
Sure. Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
it,
Absolutely.
it's yeah.
So, um, just as a barometer, the how you greet yourself in the morning when you wake up and look at yourself in the mirror. Where are you on the scale of, God, you again, or
Oh,
or I love you, Tricia Barker.
well, let me tell you, for the past year, what I
Yeah.
do is I put on headphones and I dance wildly. And this is a dance of joy for just
Oh,
celebration
nice.
ahead of the fact. So it's celebrating me, it's celebrating life, it's
There you
just
go.
celebrating everything. So I wake up with pretty great joy,
Yeah.
actually. And it started as a silly exercise, really just, to pump myself up for the day. But then I
Right.
connected a certain amount of self love to it, because I love to dance. And as you get older, you're not going out to clubs as much anymore. And you're
Right.
not, there just isn't a dance
Yeah,
every
I
other
know. Yeah.
week.
We've
What
been out.
happened? Yeah. Yeah. So I create my own party in the morning, and the party is a celebration of me and my life. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think I wake up with like a high amount of love, but not in that, looking in the mirror and going, I love you. It's more just like, I love my life.
Yeah, but you're gonna try that now, aren't you? You're
Yeah.
gonna wake up one morning and you're gonna go, I wonder if I can do that.
I've read a lot of Louise Hay's books, and
Yeah.
I know that exercise, and it is
Yeah.
a very healing, good
Yeah.
one. Actually, it really is. It's a
Right.
good one.
So, a lot of surprises for you because, as an agnostic, you would never have expected to actually experience, an afterlife, really. But then, also you probably weren't expecting, what has developed now for you since as kind of a result of the near-death experience, which is opening now to also the mediumship and a more continual connection to the spirit realm.
Yeah. So I knew I was different, and I just called it like, I crossed the veil, and I'm like, so this veil between me and death, is just kind of flimsy, like, and so I could see when people were going to die shortly, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my grandfather continued to communicate with me, mainly
Yeah.
when I was in tough situations, and he was the only one over there. And I read about different mediums, and I thought, and I had no interest to develop it or try it,
Uh-huh.
but certainly I had lots of paranormal experiences, where I would run into ghosts and beg them to leave certain areas and tell them,
Right.
remind them to go to the light. And I just thought, well, this this happens now. I just see this now, like whatever. And, but I have this mission. I was very focused on my mission to teach. And so
Right.
all of my energy was focused on their success, their wellness, their happiness, because, hey, that was God's plan for me. So
Right.
I didn't think it was important, to study mediumship, but sometimes students would lose a grandparent or parent, and I would get little messages from that person, mainly just of love, great love. But sometimes it was really cool. At the college level, one girl's father died, and I quickly, before creative writing class started, I said, well, is there something she's hurting? She
Yeah.
just lost you a few days ago. Is there something you want her to know? And her father said, well, this is going to upset you as a professor, but she needs to do something outside of education. She's really passionate about something else. And I was like, well, that's all right. I'll ask her about it. Like, not everyone has to go to college, and so I asked her.
Was there anything else that you wanted me to?
So I felt the great love. Well, she had a passion for cooking and, wanted to have a food truck and wanted to own a restaurant someday.
Right.
And she was really good at it. And I was like,
Yeah.
hey, go do this. And here's some names of chefs. And, just go do it.
Right.
You can always come back to college and
Right.
follow your
Yeah.
passion. And,
Yeah.
and so, I started noticing that it could be used to help people. And she was even
Right.
open when I said, I felt your father, kind of come to me and remind you of this. And she was very touched. And I thought, okay, then there's something to this
Right.
that can be
Yeah.
very healing for
Yeah.
people. And so,
Yeah.
so I opened up more and more to the idea of it and met more mediums. And I think the more you start interacting with other mediums, then you're like, okay, this is how it's done. This is what you do. This is how you ground yourself, and you
Right.
start
Yeah.
figuring
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah. Was it so? Tell me a little about just what that was like for you, though, when it was first starting to kind of make itself apparent that this was possible for you. I mean, what was what were some of the things that were happening, and how were you receiving them? Like right at the first.
Yeah, so right at the first, I guess the first time that it happened was in New Orleans, and I was in not such a great marriage, and I needed to get out of it quickly. And I felt my grandfather come to me, and he said, just follow my directions, get in your car and drive. And so I drove, and I drove way out into the country, and I'd never been to this part. It was like across the causeway, way into Mandeville, and there was a jewelry shop, and I had my wedding ring, and he said, get out and see if they'll buy your wedding ring. And I was like, okay. And so the guy, it bought it for way more than I could have sold it at a pawn shop. He was like, yeah, I'll polish it up and sell it. And this is great. And he handed me, quite a bit of cash. And I was like, oh, this is enough cash to move. So I can just, be done
Answer.
with this marriage.
Problem solved.
Done. And so that moment was very touching, though, because I felt a real sense of urgency, like my well-being, my life, everything was at stake. And he reminded me to call my dad, and, my dad talked to my husband, and really, that there was just a lot that went on, to make sure that I was safe and protected, and really just kind of got out of there because it was not a good situation. And I thought of all the people who are in painful situations in life and were never alone. And I thought maybe I got this message to remind others who are in painful moments to go ahead and open up to their ancestors and their angels and all the help that's available to them. Because even if they're not finding it in their friend, or they've moved across the country and they don't have a support system, there is that realm. And so that was the first time, but I just thought we're connected to our ancestors. That made sense to me.
Sure.
Of course they stay close to us. I still wasn't ready to accept being a medium, or, even though in New Orleans, my God, I taught a group of students there, and I felt all their ancestors around them. So, it was like a crowded room sometimes. I was like, whoa, this one's telling me to tell this student this thing. And so there was, like a lot of magic, I think, in the classroom, and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't until my father passed in 2008 that I just had a very clear connection with
Mm-hmm.
him. And then I started meeting other mediums,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they couldn't connect with him like I could. And I thought, well, okay, I don't even need them, to
Mm-hmm.
connect with my father. That's clear enough.
Yeah.
And let me see, what I get from other people. And then different people who died started meeting me in dreams too. So
Mm.
not necessarily people that I knew, but people who had messages for me, as I
Right.
started this book and as I
Yeah.
started beginning to speak. And I was like, wow, this is really kind of profound and powerful that this connection is available. So
Yeah.
yeah, then
Yeah.
it began that way.
I I want to just go back just for a second
Oh yeah.
to the grandfather story, um,
Yeah.
only because I mean that's a big moment and it was an emotional moment, and there probably was not a lot of clarity, for you at that moment, and then this happens and your grandfather is there and he's talking to you, and you trusted it, and you followed it, and I'm just curious, what was it in you that made you in that moment feel like that was something you could trust, and it wasn't just, you weren't just imagining something or coming up with a scenario, or trying to figure it out for yourself, and that just happened to be what popped into your head. I'm very struck by that. He said, "Get in the car and drive," and you said, "Okay," and you did.
I know. I guess because he was over there, in my near-death experience, and
Yeah.
so I trusted him, and it was kind of interesting that he told me to drive into the country, so it was like I was driving into this heavenly landscape that I
Right.
remembered from him. So it was the quality of it,
Ah.
like
Right.
and maybe that's how you differentiate between, is something love? Does it have this connection of deep
Mm-hmm.
love and peace? And
Right.
in the middle of the chaos of that moment, I felt like I was in a bubble of great love and peace, kind of like I was when I was in that heavenly landscape. So it was very familiar. It was almost
Right.
as if he filled me with peace, and I was just like, everything's going to work out. So within that, and I guess I'm kind of perceptive, and so I can tell the difference between different energies,
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
and I could just tell that his was this peaceful, beautiful
Right.
energy that I could trust, and so I just allowed myself to be guided, and I guess I do like these verifiable facts, like.
Sure.
And it seems verifiable that I would not know where this jewelry shop is. And, this was
Mm-hmm.
just randomness, but I
Yeah.
felt like, well, he really did take me to a place
Of
that
course.
did
Yeah.
give me,
Yeah.
the amount of money that I needed.
I
And
know.
so it was,
No, he really did exactly what he said. He had a plan. He said, "Just get in the car and drive. I got this." Yeah.
I know. It was sweet. And then it was also, I don't know, I just felt protected. And I think a lot of people might take comfort from that, in
Yeah.
their worst moments, that
Sure.
there's help.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. So now that this has opened, and after your dad's passing in 2008, it really sort of, you know, crystallized more for you. So you're teaching now, right? Or you're helping
Yeah.
people sort of with their own mediumship, or you're just doing readings and things for people too, isn't that right?
Mainly I'm just doing readings when I can, but I'm still a
Mm-hmm.
college professor and I still do teach English and I still do teach creative writing. And so that's just what I continue to do. And it's kind of in my spare time that I'll do readings or connect
Right.
with others. And there are, I just know so many amazing people now after the couple of years of blogging, connecting with others, that
Right.
one thing that I love is if I'm doing a reading, I might call a friend of mine who's an energy worker, or we'll do the same for each other and we'll
Yeah.
send each other energy before the reading to really help that person. Because I think
Right.
as a
Mm-hmm.
community, you can
Yeah.
really add a lot of light and love to the experience and make it
Yeah.
even better for everyone involved. And so I've been graced to have teachers and guides along the way, and to I've really opened up to this. So when I'm busy, I don't schedule, very honestly, very
Yeah.
many readings, but with summer months coming up, I am more likely to connect more with people. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I maybe a little bit longer, I got a message from God that my teaching mission was done, and I really did freak out, and I'm still continuing teach, because that just, I was like, wow, are you gonna
Oh,
just take me off the planet now?
right.
Like,
So wait a sec.
what do I have to do? And I think I'm kind of in that same boat that so many near-death experiencers are in who didn't have a mission. So they come back and they're like, what's my mission? I need to do something for God. And I had one for 20 years. I was like in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Right.
And now that I'm kind of free to do what I wanted, I got the lesson. I was like, I understand that I have to add goodness and healing and help and education to this world in some way, but
Right.
what way do I want to do that? And
Yeah.
so obviously, I studied creative writing in English. I was like, of course, I'll write a book. Like that.
Uh-huh.
That was the
Right.
first thing that came to mind. And I was like, but I want to write it differently. Like people write spiritual books and then they write literature, and I love literature. So, I love The Liars Club and The Glass
Mm-hmm.
Castle and all these great works. And I was like, well, why don't I combine the two? Why don't I
Yeah.
write a memoir that looks back to what I learned in graduate school about writing and storytelling, and what I love about poetry, and yet combine it with spiritual experiences, but make it very real, kind of like
Yeah.
my story with my grandfather, anything else. Like, hold on to the worldliness of life. Like, we go through some real crap in life.
Yeah.
Like
We
sometimes
did.
we get divorced, sometimes we meet a narcissist, sometimes like we go through some really tough things, and
Mm-hmm.
yet spirituality isn't just all airy fairy. It's like getting into your life and making your life better. And I
Right.
think that like a connection to ancestors, to angels, to God, it helps everyone with real situations. So
Yeah.
that was
Right.
part of my journey. So no, I'm really, I don't know exactly what I might do outside of traditional academia, but I'm hoping that the book is a piece that
Right.
kind of launches me
Yeah.
in a different direction.
Right.
And I do have well, if I stay with this college, I will have sabbatical, not this year, but the next year, which I could be on book tours. And then I also want to dedicate time. I want to write a second book just geared toward that college age, and maybe combine some of spirituality and some of college success together, and
Mm-hmm.
give this as really just a gift to my campus and to college students, a way to begin some of that healing and start looking into these modalities to heal from things, and really to address in a deep way things like recovering from child abuse. Like the minute
Right.
you get to college, you are an adult and you can start working on yourself. So why not have more tools? It's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to have tools to study, like
Right.
better, and to, these things, but hey, let's talk about the real stuff. And
Yeah.
so, that's part of my long-term goal and mission, but yeah, still figuring it out.
Well, welcome to the party.
Right.
We're all still figuring it out, So, so just kind of synthesizing everything that you've gotten just to this point, even because there's going to be more. Obviously, things continue to unfold, and there's deepening, and there's more understanding, and there's just more tapping in. But right now, from the perspective of the near-death experience, what's like the most important thing you think people need to know right now?
To not fear death, like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, don't fear the Reaper. No,
Don't leave out milk and cookies either necessarily, but
yeah. But yeah, so I think I was afraid of death before my near-death experience. I thought, this body was all, and I was so
Yeah.
relieved that there's so much more. So beyond that, though, I mean, I think people should look at the life reviews of near-death experiencers and take from mine, what
Mm-hmm.
might apply to their lives. Like, be good to others. Don't get upset with the little things in life that you can't control, and be kind and be good and be loving and be love as much
Yeah.
of the time as you can. So, there's all this focus and culture about manifesting what you want and bringing the love of your life into your life and all this. Why
Right.
don't you just be love? Why don't you be the most
Ah.
loving person that you can possibly be, and then things are going to work out, and if they don't, you're love. So
Right.
what does it matter?
Exactly. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
like
That's actually
so
really beautiful. That's a beautiful piece of advice for people. And yeah, I like that. Very nice.
yeah.
Very, very nice. So, one other question for you. Do you find that right now, in this place where you are, that you can tap back into that oneness and sort of reunite with that feeling that you were having when you were floating over the town and becoming just sort of part of the whole oneness?
With meditation and great spiritual events, I think that does happen more frequently. So
Hmm.
when I get stressed out and I'm not meditating enough, I'm more grounded, I think, in the
Yeah.
the world. But as I spend more time in nature, as I meditate more, yeah, I have these amazing experiences where, and I think, like people look at me like I'm nuts sometimes who know me, if, like friends were meditating and I'm like, wow, I left my body and I merged with this hawk and I was just out there for, I was like just one with the world out there. And then I came
Yeah.
back to my body and they're like, I was just focusing on my breathing. you know? I'm like, sorry for being strange. I'm sorry. And I think they don't believe me sometimes, but
Right.
but I know that it's true. I know
Sure.
that there is this ability to leave the body and it's so much fun,
Yeah.
to go merge with a hawk for a while and
Right. Right.
feel this oneness with nature that, we're not necessarily contained
Hmm.
just in this form even now. And so I think,
Right.
that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's totally fun. So exciting that, especially for people in Southern California and for people in Arizona, you're going to be speaking next week in Tucson and the Phoenix area. So what? It's Tucson on the 10th. Is that right? Yeah. And
Yes, I
you're at
think
the
so.
Unity Church in Tucson, correct? And then
Yes.
Friday, you are in Mesa, right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
Unity
So
Church
then they're
in Mesa.
they, they might want to check their website because I think I got notification that there might be a Sunday event too at a church. So I think there's a lot going on that
Right.
weekend.
Well, actually, I did check their website, and there is a Sunday event on the 13th at 2 o'clock at the Episcopal Church, the Advent Episcopal Church. So,
Yes.
anyway, how great is that? That's very exciting for people. They can, if they're in Southern California or Phoenix, they can come see you speak in person.
Yeah, and I love the Q&A part of those because these interviews are great. I mean, your questions are wonderful, and I think connecting with people is just such a beautiful part of this experience,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
love it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad they have a long Q&A.
Yeah. What do people most often want to know about your experience, or just in general? What are their most common questions?
I think sometimes they want to share something similar, like maybe they were
Ah.
3 or 4 and they drowned and they just remember a piece of it and they're like, thank you for reaffirming it.
Mm.
But yeah, the things that I've struggled with in life, tend to attract people who struggled with the same things, whether it's moving on from a difficult childhood or moving on from anything, that's been particularly painful. And so people ask, yeah, they ask specifics about being out of form, but I think they want to just connect, and that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And we all want to be heard, and we all want to be reassured. And I think probably the thing that it offers most, again, and you said it beautifully, which is it really does sort of release people from that fear of death. And it also helps release that sense of loss too, when you have just a knowing that there is a continuity of the soul. They're just not in that body anymore.
Yeah, and I've thought about all of these issues more and more as time has gone on. And I think a near death experience is a beautiful, wonderful thing. But I think it also makes us a little strange. Like, I'm not as codependent as most people. Like, I think other people look
There's
for,
a lot of very sad codependent people out there wishing that you could just partner up with them.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, though? There's this sense of like you can look to God for everything that you need,
Yeah.
and then people are just a joy, along
Right.
the way. And so
Yes.
there's this sense of it's really confusing, like, and
Right.
I think there's so many people who have asked a question about, romance and these types of things. I'm like, wow, I really don't have the answers for you on that. Like, no, near death experiencers are in all kind of categories of, like happily married, unhappily married, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not the point. I
Yeah.
think the point is, we just have had this amazing experience with God.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that's, we know that that's the love that's most important.
Well, and I think at least it seems like my experience is that you bring a piece of that back with you in a much larger way. People find it and people get to it on their own in various different ways. There's all sorts of spokes that lead to the same hub,
Yes.
Near-death experience, I just think is a little bit of a shortcut sometimes for people. But yeah, you get in a room of 50 to 100 people who've had a near-death experience, and it just feels like home, It really does. They just bring a little piece of that energy back with them. Yeah.
That's neat that you feel that way and can pick up on that. That's so cool.
Well, being that I don't have superpowers myself, I'm glad I can pick up on it. Well, real quick, Tricia. So your book, we aren't sure when that's going to come out yet. Is that right?
I have an agent, and she's a wonderful agent, and so hopefully, I'll get an offer from publishers, and then know,
Right.
publishing dates and so
Okay.
forth. But
Right.
yeah, it doesn't happen right away. I really, being an English major, I wanted to go the traditional route and
Sure.
get the best publisher that I can, for the book. And it was a labor of love, and it's a competitive market, so it was more of a fight than I ever thought it would be.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
True.
but yeah, I'm so blessed to have a wonderful agent, and we'll see where it goes and what
Yeah.
the path opens up into.
Yeah.
But I hope it's fast, because it would be great to
It
just
would
have
be
it.
great. Yeah. Well, and you've already got people looking forward to it, so we hope it's fast too, because we want a copy in our hands so we can read it. So how can in the interim, people stay in touch with you and people follow what you're doing, and how can they find you and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel that I hop on quite frequently, and it's you can find me if you type in Tricia Barker Near Death Experience or Tricia Barker Healed by the Light, and then you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, and also I do have a website, and I'm this summer I have a lot of time, and so I'm starting a new web page, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
have a symposium, a near-death experience symposium, all online on June
Oh,
16th, and I'm
nice.
getting a lot of different speakers, and this is the first time I've ever put anything together like this. But I might have to ask you if you know anyone I should contact. But yeah, it's just going to be an
I
all-day
just might.
event. Yeah, you might, where people talk and then leave some time for questions. And I'm just excited to put it on and
Yeah.
get involved with people in
Oh,
more
nice.
ways. And then I might also, like toward the end of the summer, create some online classes, kind of like those places that Mind Valley and
Right.
places that
Yep.
offer classes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm planning to offer my own, and then maybe some other people's too, because I think I can run 5 classes on this website. So it's a
Yeah.
long-term plan, but
Oh,
it's,
nice. All right. So, and will that be a different website than what you've
yeah,
got now? Will it
yeah, but
have this? You'll use the
I'll
same domain,
I will announce it on all my
all
YouTube
your
and
other
Facebook,
stuff.
and
Okay.
yeah,
Got it.
when it's all ready.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. Well, bless your heart. You are a joy to talk to, and thank you so
You
much
too.
for coming and sharing your story and being here with us today. It was just a blast. It was just great, and
Uh,
you know, I just think personally some of the elements that you brought to this particular experience, I think are really beneficial for people, especially the being kindness and just the expressing love and beautiful, really nice. So
Oh,
thank
well,
you.
thank you. It was such a pleasure to talk with you. I enjoy your show so much. So thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully I will talk to you soon and, just sort of follow up and see you are and see what's going on, see
Yeah.
how it's all coming along. So
Well, I'll certainly send you the link about the symposium on June 16th for sure.
fabulous. Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
That's great. So
Okay.
thank you, Tricia.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that is Tricia Barker. And again, if you want to find her on YouTube, you can go to her YouTube channel. You can search on Tricia Barker and near-death experiences. And she also has a Facebook page, which is right here, and you can take a look at that. Go to facebook.com, Tricia Barker NDE, and you can find her there. So thank you for joining us today for another Superpowers and getting a chance to meet and enjoy Tricia Barker. And look forward to seeing you the next time. And remember to go out there and experience the extraordinary.